when first you approach a subject as big as music theory, it's very easy to quickly become overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of it. As someone new to the subject, you have two main problems really. First of all, it's really difficult to tell the difference between the details in the subject that are absolutely essential to it and those which are merely incidental or only apply to specialist areas of it. And the second problem is trying to figure out which order to learn the subject in, the parts of the subject in. To solve these problems and to give you as smooth a ride as possible through the subject, we've devised a method of presenting the materials you need to learn in a logical step-by-step order. I call this the pyramid of guitar music theory. Here it is. This pyramid includes only two types of items. Firstly, those things that you need to know to make learning to play guitar at advanced level a quicker and easier process. Secondly, it includes some items you may not immediately find a direct use for, but that must be learned in order better to understand the subjects higher on the pyramid. The fundamental way of using this device is to start at the bottom and learn each level thoroughly before moving further on up the pyramid. Let's take a closer look at it from the bottom up. The first two levels have appeared already at various stages on our beginners and intermediate courses. They are really the two minimum pieces of knowledge required to be able to name any note anywhere on the fretboard. So we started out way back in probably lesson 1 or 2 learning the open string names. Elephants and donkeys grow big ears, E-A-D-G-B-E. That's one axis of this grid covered. Then if you've done the lesson on the chromatic scale, especially if you've done your chromatic chanting exercise in the guitar gym, you'll know that we can work the notes out up each string by using the chromatic scale. E, F, F sharp G, G sharp A sharp B, C, C sharp D, D sharp E, E flat D, D flat C, B, B flat A flat G, G flat F, E, and so on up each string. That's really what those bottom two levels of the pyramid are about. Building on this knowledge and ability, the next two steps enable you to find any major scale on the fretboard, whether horizontally up a single string, or vertically in one position. Or with a combination of both approaches. The major scale is by far the single most important element in understanding music theory. So the more comprehensive your ability to work with it and find it on the guitar fretboard, the better. Once you're familiar with this level of understanding, things begin to get a lot more interesting. The next step is one of those you can get by without, but actually, once learned, it will greatly help improve your progress in the higher regions of the pyramid. This step is standard notation. We'll take you through as much of this area of musical knowledge as we know is necessary to help make the rest of the journey easier to learn. We know that the vast majority of guitar players are never going to have to sight read standard notation, but we also know that it is a great advantage to at least have grasped the basics. And with our lessons, we promise you'll find this easy and fun. At the next level, we take all the mystery out of key signatures, all those sharps and flats that you find littering chord symbols and things. Will start to make more sense, and you'll begin to get a real insight into what it means when we say a particular tune is in a certain major or minor key. At the next stage, we really get to look at the nuts and bolts of how chords are created. Soon, you'll never need to look at another chord chart book. You'll have the understanding necessary to create your own chords out of thin air, anywhere on the fretboard in any key. So at this level, once you've grasped the subject of chord formulas and how they relate to major scales, when you see a sign perhaps on a piece of jazz music says play a B flat 7 flat 5, you no longer think, oh God, I wish I'd studied chemistry better at school. You can go B flat, there's one there. Seventh chords, they've got these notes in, and then there's the fifth note there, and I flatten it, so I've ended up with, oh yeah, B7 flat 5. Lovely jazzy sound. So that's what I mean by being able to make chords up just from your knowledge. You don't have to remember the shapes, because at that level of guitar playing, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of different chords, and trying to memorise them all is really seriously hard work. Then it's on to another really exciting level where we explore the relationship between scales and chords. From this knowledge, you'll suddenly be able to understand how some of us old hands can play a song in one key, then at the drop of a hat shift to another key, or another key, and play the same sequence in any key you like without the necessity to sit down and work out all the chord shapes. This knowledge also is really useful for the sort of creative task of writing songs, putting chord sequences together for your songs. So that's a really interesting level for any budding songwriters. Alright, then it's onwards and upwards to the summit of the pyramid. The next two steps build on the earlier ones and are again of great interest to songwriters and anyone trying to work out a chord sequence just by listening to a record, which of course is an essential skill if you want to join a band. Then understanding the composition of minor scales will really help expand your options when improvising or composing. Unlike major scales, there's quite a lot of variety with minor scales. From the natural minor scale, the harmonic minor scale, slightly sort of Eastern sound to it, the Dorian minor scale, slightly bluesy sound to it, and then you can kind of mix all these extra notes in together and make some really interesting melodies using chromatic notes. And that sort of knowledge can really help enrich your play, whether we're talking about your improvising or your composing. At the next level, pentatonic scale theory will help you understand how all those great blues and rock and roll licks work. With that understanding, that helps you develop some ideas of your own that you may otherwise not have stumbled across. With this sort of knowledge, you can take a lick that you've perhaps learnt in one area of the guitar. Here's an example. And understanding how that uses various notes relating to the chord that you're playing over, you could find a different way of expressing the same idea higher up the fretboard. Physically that looks entirely different, but you can hear it's a very kind of similar sound. That sort of understanding again broadens your options, what you're able to do. Finally, the top two steps are really the backbone of jazz improvising knowledge. But an understanding of more exotic chords and modes is also great for adding extra creative potential to rock, blues, funk, country and other styles of guitar too. There's a great view from the top of the pyramid. Music theory can look pretty daunting when you're looking up at it from the bottom. But providing you work your way systematically through each level, once you get to the summit, the whole subject does look wonderfully simple and clear. And it will greatly enhance your enjoyment of music and your ability to play music. Now, here's the most important thing I have to say about how you actually use this pyramid. If you find yourself at any stage struggling with part of the subject of music theory, then look at the level below where you're at and work at beefing that up. Almost all problems with music theory don't come from what you're studying, they come from the level before that you didn't quite study hard enough or for long enough to get a complete grasp of. That causes confusion at the next level. So that's my big tip of the day. The other thing to say is that we're always on hand to help, and if you have any confusion about any part of the subject, please just post a question. Okay, well, have fun climbing the pyramid.